Yeah, can hear you. Yeah.
Thank you. So I've just clicked on record, so you'll be able to access this at a later date. So welcome everybody. Welcome to those that have joined the call, and welcome to those that are listening on the recording. Firstly, I'd like to wish you all the best of health at this pretty difficult time. I guess the purpose of the call this evening is to ensure that the cricket network across the county is able to sustain itself during these unprecedented times. If and when we get the green light to start playing and resume cricket again, I guess we want to ensure that clubs are ready for business, have all been safeguarded for the future. Just a bit of housekeeping. So if you could just make sure that you keep yourselves on mute. I think I do have control of that as well, so I can always mute somebody if they don't realise. There is a chat feature which clubs can utilise. So if there are any questions, feel free just to drop them into the chat feature. We'll do our best to answer them this evening. Should there be questions that we don't know the answer to, we'll take them away to the relevant people and ask, and then come back to you. So feel free to populate that feature if you have some burning questions. Just in terms of the agenda, apologies in advance. This webinar is going to be quite one way. The majority of the call will focus on funding and financial support available to you. But we also wanted to give a quick update of where we're at, what we know so far, and then we'll get straight into sort of the support that you clubs can potentially access. And then also finish on looking at how clubs can support the national effort over the next few weeks. On the call, there's Mark Barber, Head of Community at Leicestershire County Cricket Club, Dave Allen, who's a City Development Officer, and hopefully we'll be joined by Annette Kendrick, who is the Funding and Clubs Officer at Leicestershire and Rutland Sport. So without further ado, I shall pass over to Mark. You need to unmute yourself, Mark. There you go.
Okay. Hi everyone. Just firstly, just Andy, for your information, Annette is on the call.
Okay.
Annette is info as what we were looking at earlier on.
Thank you.
So yeah, welcome to everybody. Thanks for joining this call. Good opportunity really for us to just give you an overview of the current landscape and help you to understand what's happening with our team and our support mechanism so far. Essentially, as Andy has mentioned, the three of us that are on the call are those that are operational in terms of staff at the community team at the County Cricket Club. So we're sort of acting as the cricket board always has done in these times. Clearly, you will all be aware of the furloughing situation and what's happening around the country. We've sort of taken that support and ensured that we do all that we can to retain all of our team and make sure that long term we're able to maintain our staffing levels. So the majority of our team, just over half of our team, has been furloughed in order to keep hold of those members of staff and keep them occupied. Myself, Dave, and Andy are here to primarily support you guys, support the clubs. And make sure that we can continue to offer that support and keep the game ticking along, and ready yourselves, ready the clubs for when we are able to get started again and get cricket going. In terms of communication, our email addresses are on the screen, and the slides will be shared with you after the call. So you'll have our contact details. Hopefully, most of you have them already. And I know, looking at the people that are on the call, we've made contact previously many times, so hopefully you'll have our contact details already. Outside of this, we do have our social media accounts, so Facebook and Twitter. The @Less Cricket tags will reach our social media accounts, and most of the information you'll be able to find on our website and we're trying to do all that we can to provide regular updates. We've specified a particular area on the website, which is titled Coronavirus, where you'll find all of the latest updates. That slide, it seems to be in the wrong place. So the bit that's circled on the main page of the website is the coronavirus section. So if you hover over that, there'll be a drop-down menu, and you'll be able to find all of our latest information, which will help you to find that relevant support. Thanks, Andy. In terms of current updates, most of you will be aware that all cricket is suspended. When we say all cricket is suspended, it's not just match play. That goes for training and any other kind of use of the club space. Clearly, there's a need for grounds to be maintained at this time, and guidance will have been shared to all of the groundsmen and all clubs in terms of what ground staff are allowed to do. So that can continue in terms of maintenance. There's a sort of minimum amount that's needed to be done at this time. Clearly, the grass doesn't stop growing, so there's a real need to stay on top of things and do everything that's possible to ready yourselves for when cricket does start again. In terms of the game itself, all of the decisions are being sort of made and guided by medical and science, and the government are being really clear on their stance. So everything that we can do is really coming through government advice and the scientific evidence that's being provided to us. We're not making any decisions on the game itself without having that really clear steer from the scientific and the medical experts. We will continue as a game to conform to that and make sure that we're doing all that we can around social distancing and ensuring clubs can do all that they can to observe the social distancing advice. In terms of locally, the leagues and the governing body updates, communication has come out to those clubs that are in the Leicestershire and Rutland Cricket League. The first half of the season has been cancelled. Looking at a potential start of July the 4th, that's not a guaranteed, so please don't take that as cricket will definitely start on July the 4th. Again, we're being completely steered by the government advice and medical advice that's coming through. So please don't take it as this is the date we're going to start. We absolutely don't know when we are going to be able to get the game going again. In terms of other leagues, again, the whole game is suspended in line with the ECB guidance, and as soon as that ECB guidance says that we can get ready to start again, there will obviously be a bit of a social integration period before we can start getting the game live and kicking again. So please just bear with and do all that you can to make sure that you continue to be ready for cricket to get started again. You'll know, or you may have seen, those of you that are ground staff will have seen, hopefully, some communication. The Institute of Groundsmen has changed its name to the Grounds Management Association. So volunteers, again, should follow the latest government guidelines that have been provided. I know that some guidance has been provided to groundsmen so that you can do all that you can to make sure you're not putting yourselves at risk. Observing those social distancing and making sure that there's really good cleaning routines to be able to observe and keep yourself as safe as possible. Thanks, Andy. In terms of what you can be doing right now, clearly there is some funding advice that's come out there, but really the immediate action is to have a look at ourselves as cricket clubs and make sure that we're doing all that we can to review our financial situation, do what we can. There's some really good advice on the Sport England Club Matters website. There's lots of resources there that you can access that is going to be really helpful to give you some really good advice around what you can do as a club to keep yourselves ready for the game to start again. In terms of reviewing your finances and understanding what the impact of this current situation could be, clearly we know that there's going to be definitely a reduced season, maybe no season at all, but having a look at what you can do to really gauge what your situation might be in sort of 3 different scenarios. Have a look at a partially reduced season, a half a season, as with the Leicestershire and Rutland Cricket League, as that stands at the moment, and no season at all. have a look at what that financial impact could be. After this, we will share some documents, and we've got a really good piece of documentation that has been shared with us by another county, which gives a way of being able to forecast the club's finances, and it looks at those 3 scenarios, which is going to be really useful. We'll share that spreadsheet with you. Encourage you to share that with your treasurers. Maybe there's some treasurers on the call who can make use of this document and really start to plan where you can be as a club for the rest of this season. Have a look at what you can do to reduce your expenditure. Speak to anybody that you might have as a debtor. Speak to anybody who you might owe some money to. Have a look at those utility companies. Does the club have a TV license? Is there a way of being able to check on whether you can freeze those payments for the time being? Have a look at those subscriptions that you might have. There might be some clubs that are on the call that might have a Sky subscription or a BT subscription. Have a look at what can be done with those subscriptions and look to reduce your expenditure as much as possible at this time. Again, check with your brewery about honouring some unopened stock. If there might be some stock that's sort of at the club from before the lockdown ensued, just have a look at contacting the brewery. Most of this, many clubs will have already done, but for those that haven't really thought about this so far, some good sort of practice that's happened so far and things that we've picked up from other clubs and other sort of counties that have shared best practice. Have a look at your insurances. Check to see if there is a business interruption scheme clause within your policies. Have a look to see if there's a way of being able to your outgoings. Do all that you can to avoid any sort of expenditure wherever possible. There's a bullet point there that says don't commit. Essentially, we all, as cricket clubs, have events that will run through the year. Maybe have a look at those events that are potentially mass gatherings that the government are sort of advising to steer clear of at the moment. It might be, I know that there are clubs that have events towards the end of the season that might be looking at party sort of days, beer festivals, fireworks events, etc. Have a look at minimising your expenditure and not committing too much at this stage to be able to ready yourself for the sort of when cricket does get started again, and do all that you can to sort of minimise that expenditure. Other things that we've found and I've seen some really good areas of practice, and Dave will share a little bit more around this, is communicate. Communicate with your members, communicate with those debtors and those sort of outgoing costs that you might have. Communicate with us in terms of support that might be required, but essentially don't think that you're sort of sitting there alone and there's no way out of this. Communicate and try and find out any areas of good practices that other clubs might have experienced, and I'm sure there'll be some really good advice that can come through and be able to help you with the way that you're acting as a club at this time. What I would suggest is not rushing into anything, not making any snap decisions around there being no season or anything like that. Take your time, make a really well valued, judged decision, and make sure that you are getting a really good piece of advice from us as a county board, and also from the game itself. Speak to the clubs, see what they're doing, and understand how you can best be ready for when cricket does get started again. Thanks, Andy. Now you're muted.
Yeah, did what you did. Apologies. Okay, so in terms of the financial support, then I think with all of the financial supports, it's really important that we look at it as keeping the lights on for club cricket. Sport England received a number of applications early on when their emergency fund was launched, and these were around capital builds, and that's not really what this fund is for. You can't emphasise enough that this is about safeguarding the game and not really looking at new projects. So it is very much around revenue funding. We as Leicestershire and the ECB specifically are looking to support those clubs most in need. Those clubs that can look after themselves, sustain themselves, then please do so. So what we've got here, we've got a bit of a roadmap of the current funding landscape, and it's a kind of a timeline of where clubs should be going first in terms of financial support. So first and foremost, we want clubs to look at whether they're eligible for government financial support through the local authority. Following that, it's Sport England and their emergency community fund. And then we get into the ECB support programs where with the emergency loan fund and the returns to cricket grants. And that's not necessarily the end of the road. We've got other opportunities which we'll come on to as well. So there are a number of options available to clubs. And also throughout this timeline, we as a community team are here to support that process. Okay, so government financial support. It's no secret that we want clubs to utilise as much government support as possible. I'm not going to go into all of these areas. I'm just going to focus on the Small Business Grant Fund. If you are interested in any of these other areas, do visit the government website. There'll be more information on there, particularly if you've got professional staff working behind bars or coaches you employ. Feel free to visit the government website. So the Small Business Grant Fund and Retail and Hospitality Grant Scheme. I've had a number of conversations with clubs who have applied or are in the process of applying, which is great news. But we want all of our clubs who are eligible to put an application in. Mark and I have completed an audit to the best of our knowledge, and there's a number of clubs that you will see. The next slide lists those clubs that we think are eligible. That's not to say that if your club isn't on there that you're not eligible. Certainly you should go back to your committees and find out if you are. And if you are, we would really encourage you to get in touch with your local authority to put an application in. You'll find the links to the local authority websites on our coronavirus page on our websites. They're all listed on there. Clubs that are eligible may qualify for a £10,000 or £25,000 grants. The key to receiving the grants is that your club must have a rateable value and be registered with your local authority. Some local authorities may be more or less proactive than others. So Charnwood have been reasonably proactive, and I know some clubs that have received their grant aid already. Others might be a little bit slower. So do be patient and be prepared to obviously ask the question. There are some cases in the country where clubs have a rateable value on their pavilions and buildings, as well as their actual playing areas. In that case, they would be eligible for 2 grants. So there has been examples of clubs that have profited to the tune of £20,000 because they had 2 rateable values on the site. So do check. The final point is around cask status. So there may be a number of clubs that are cask clubs. There has been some inconsistencies across local authorities regarding cask. Cask should have no bearing on whether you're eligible for funding, and there are examples of cask clubs receiving funding. So if the reply from your local authority is no because you're a cask club, be prepared to challenge that, and we can provide some examples of other local authorities that have provided grants to cask clubs. As I say, the links to local authorities, the small grants pages are on our website there. So this is the audit that Mark and I completed. I'll give you a chance to obviously try to find your club. we believe that these clubs are eligible. In some cases, it may be that the overarching sports organisation is the body that should be applying. So just looking at the list, an example would probably be like Highfield Rangers, for example. It'll all depend on the makeup of your club. So do investigate that, speak to the relevant people, and make sure you're kind of fighting your corner, whether you're eligible or not. And obviously this list isn't exhaustive, so this is to the best of our knowledge. In some cases, the club did not appear on the government search. That's not to say that you don't have a rateable value to your clubs.
Andy, can I just pick up on that? With a couple of questions on the 10k grants. Have other clubs received the 10k grant? Bottisford have said in the chat that they already have received it. There are a number of clubs that have received their grant already. And there's another comment around some district councils paying grants without application, and that is the case. Some district councils or city council or some authorities are paying out without application. Just on their knowledge, they're sort of looking into it and paying out because they know that certain clubs are eligible. There are other clubs that are waiting for an application. So as Andy said, it is different depending on the local authority. So have a look into it. If you haven't been contacted and you're in an area where they have been paying out, then maybe just getting in touch with the local authority and having a look at how you can make that application.
Annette, over to you. If you can unmute yourself, that'd be great.
Is that worked?
Yes, all good. I can hear you.
Hi there. Hi, yeah, I'm Annette from Leicestershire Rutland Sport. You may or may not have met me at a number of cricket clubs events previously. Andy and Mark just asked me to come along very quickly to talk about two different funding sources. The first one, I'm pretty sure I'm just reiterating what a lot of you will have heard about already and maybe even submitted applications. So Sport England have released a fund, the Community Emergency Fund. The fund itself is for £300 to £10,000, and it is there, as you can see, to help clubs that are struggling with their fixed costs. So your rent, your utilities, your insurances. So it is for those clubs that are asset owning or leasing so that they can cover, but it does cover core staffing costs. So including sort of casual workers if they can't be met elsewhere. So you might well, I saw a question in the box around ground staff. It could be that if you're paying those ground staff and so therefore you can't furlough, depending upon the self-employment arrangements and such, those sorts of things might well be able to be covered through that. You can only apply once, so I would say take your time. Make sure you have all the information you need before doing so. And they do have a very much a priority list. And a little bit like Andy said, it's the most in need. You'll hear this often with all the funding at the minute. It's about helping those most in need. And so it's looking at priority being given to those organisations that work in disadvantaged areas. And we hear this all the time, and there's some useful information on our website. There may well be cricket as well around statistics to show if you're in that, but you should know if you're in that sort of economical area of disadvantage. It's also around target groups. So those target groups are the women and girls. So if you have women and girls teams, sections, that's certainly an angle in which to write your application around. It's looking at Black minority ethnic groups, the LGBT community. If you've happened to start a new programme around that area, it would be a good one that they would like to support and make sure that that can continue. Older people, and also if you're running any programs around those with long-term health conditions. So looking at supporting those people, and that self-employed workforce we mentioned as well. The applicants, again, have got to have exhausted all government funding sources. So Sport England have been in touch with us as active partnerships and have said that this is one of the main reasons they're declining applications. So the main reason being that funding, that the people haven't looked into the government And if you can obtain government funding for your staff or such like through any other way, you must look into that as the first port of call. On LRS website, we've tried to cover it into a 5-step process, which takes you through those steps. So first step being government, then looking at the local authority, which is what Andy's just covered around those rateable value grants, then looking down into the Sport England grants and further afield, and then other support that's out there for you. So that might well help you, and that's directly off our homepage if it does. In terms of the fund, I don't know if you have applied. The latest we heard was in the first 2 weeks, 5,500. So their 10-day turnaround, which is what they've promised, I don't think they're meeting. It's a finite number of assessors. There's a challenge, as we all have, around digitally working. So they are getting decisions out. We were told they were sending some of the unsuccessful letters out this week. Whether there's more to come, there is a webinar next week. So hopefully, next week, tomorrow. So hopefully we'll pick up some more information there. Alongside Mark and Andy or via them, please get in touch if you do need any support on that. In terms of the application. But if you're looking at the application, there's sort of 4 areas that it's really being assessed on, and it's the audience or the reach. So who is it that you're working with? So it's what we covered then, just the priority target groups of the disadvantaged area. Then starting to look through the role you play. So what does your organisation do? Who do you deliver to? But more also thinking about what you're doing now. So what are you doing now to keep in touch with your community, your members, to make sure that they want to and are still keen to carry on playing cricket afterwards. The financial need, so looking at, they will ask you around your reserves or your unrestricted reserves, what they are, what expenditure you have to meet and where that is, and looking at what you know your bottom line is. And then the last question is all around that impact. So what difference will it make and what will happen if you don't receive that funding? Sorry if that's just a cover that you've already read and heard before. Hopefully a little bit more insight, and I'm sure they'll be getting those decisions out to clubs shortly.
Thanks, Annette. Okay, so on to the ECB emergency support for clubs and leagues. I'm hopeful that everybody on this call has already received the information directly from the ECB or through the community team or through social media. The emergency loan scheme is likely to be the most popular across the country. Yes, it is a loan, but there are a few things to highlight. Firstly, it's interest free. There will be a repayment holiday for 12 months. And clubs will have 3 years to pay back the loan. So this is kind of relevant to clubs with turnovers of sort of over 15,000 or more, which obviously will allow you to pay back that loan. As you can see on the slide, there is a list of things that the scheme will fund. There are things that it won't fund, such as loss of forecast income, purchase of non-essential goods, and any other expenditure that the ECB doesn't deem as essential. The application can be done online. It will be approved by Mark or I, and the links can be found on our community team websites. Those that received government grants, you can access the emergency loan scheme as a top-up. As you see at the bottom, the awards, so clubs with a junior section, including All Stars and Dynamos, between £1,000 and £5,000, and clubs with just an adult section, between £1,000 and £3,000. And then there's the Return to Cricket grant scheme. So this grant money will be targeted at our most at-risk cricket clubs, and is there as kind of a last resort. It's also available to clubs that are unable to take a loan due to their governing documents. It's available to the leagues as well. Clubs will need to evidence financial support, And this can be done by contacting myself as first port of call. There'll be more information on our website, and the links through to the ECB website. And I think it's really important that if you are looking at this, that you get to grips with the guidance notes to understand how the mechanics of the grant works. As you can see there at the bottom, in terms of awards, clubs with an adult section, £1,000, leagues £2,000, and clubs with junior sections, All Stars and Dynamos, up to £3,000. With both the loan and the grant scheme, clubs will need to produce certain documentation such as constitution, security of tenure, insurance, so on and so forth. You'll be able to access these in the guidance notes. You'll be able to understand what is required in terms of documentation. Annette, back to you.
Okay, hopefully that's working again. Yeah, I don't know if any of you sign up to our newsletter. You may or may not. On Tuesday morning we sent out this information. So I say Tuesday, yesterday. It's the days are certainly seeming long. So we've introduced a new fund called Sports Organisation Support COVID-19 Fund. It's a small pot of funding that we've set up and set aside to try and help groups within Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. So the main aim is to deliver immediate funding to organisations most in need. So it's that most in need again. So it's really demonstrating that the reason that your club might well be struggling financially in these times to maintain and can sustain. So eligible organisations are community sports clubs, but it's also much wider. So it includes voluntary organisations who might not have sport and physical activity as their main purpose, but are delivering those activities. And also some small businesses or self-employed coaches who are falling between the gap and are unable to financially keep going or be there when we do start back up again. The funding through this fund, and it is grant funding, is between 300 and 3,000. We have put on there in exceptional circumstances, it could be more. However, the large majority will be within that 300 to 3,000 pounds. As I said, its main focus aim is those delivering sport and physical activity or supporting communities to be active. And it's the result that the coronavirus has put our financial difficulty on clubs to be able to do that. So it's the direct link from the coronavirus that has caused the difficulties for you, and that it's all about being active. Now, I know within cricket clubs that's a given, but I would say, if your cricket club hires out to other organisations, to fitness groups or things, mention all of that if you are considering an application. It is designed to complement the other funds, and we have mirrored quite a lot of the information from the Sport England Fund. So you will see that we want everybody to have looked into and applied for government funding, and that does form one of the questions. And similarly, the Sport England one. So we would like to know your status with them and ask that they are your first port of call for an application. So there is an option to still make the application pending a decision from Sport England, but please don't submit to us unless that you've already looked into that fund and considered that fund. And likewise with the national governing bodies of sport. So look into the cricket ones in the first instance and use ours as really just that gap of if we really are struggling to find funding to keep and sustain your club. As we said, it's supporting those fixed costs. So it's your rentals, it's your insurances, it's your critical maintenance costs. It's not your new capital projects or anything that would be not very much deemed a nice to. And it's looking at retrospective losses from the 1st of March through to the 30th of June. So the time frame there is slightly different to Sport England's. It's slightly shorter. So it's a case of forecasting the losses. So an option within the application form is an Excel spreadsheet. Now, the one Mark's mentioned might do a better job at doing this, but it's actually trying to say, help you work it through. So it's giving you the various different columns to be able to populate, to see where are the losses the club might engage. So it's not, we would have run a fundraising event and made £1,000. Can we have that £1,000, please? It's looking at what are the losses that the club is facing, the costs and the expenditure. What have you got and what is the shortfall? What can you no longer meet? Bear with me. So that spreadsheet is optional. That's not something that you would have to do. If you're not signed up to our newsletter to have received that, the details are off the homepage of the Leicestershire and Rutland Sport website, and I'm sure a link can be shared for that. Thank you.
Dave, over to you.
Thanks, Andy. So this section, we're just going to move away slightly from the financial support that's available to clubs. And as Mark mentioned, just take a brief look at some ways in which clubs are using their social media channels to engage with their members. So we're just going to highlight a couple of examples from clubs around the county, showcase a few simple ideas for how to go about doing this. So here you can see what being Fleckning, just engaging their members through a guess the player feature. We've used some images, some clues there as to potentially some past players. And then you have Lutterworth, who've used a On This Day 6 years ago feature that also links through to some scorecards. So just some simple ideas there for how to help keep some members involved with the club on a regular basis. Just some straightforward things that clubs can be doing. You can flip to the next one, please, Andy. So here we've got Oakham, who are arranging a collective cycle run to raise money for charity. So it's encouraging their members to keep active whilst also raising money for a local food bank. So a great cause attached to that as well. A really good idea just to keep connected with all their members. And then we have Kibworth, who've created the Isolation Arms. So that's just encouraging members to keep in touch over a video call like this, joining conversation with the members. Participants can also purchase a drinks voucher, which puts a bit of money into the club. That can then be redeemed when the club's back and open for business. Just another really good way of keeping members connected with each other as well as being connected to the club. Next one. And then finally, we just have some examples of what the county club have done and what the ECB have done to help support some of the national messages, particularly around the NHS. We as the community team have also been sharing some of Chance to Shine's weekly cricket activities that can be done from home. So these are perfect for any clubs who are looking to keep their junior members occupied doing some cricket activity. They're all on handles that were shared at the start. And there's just lots of examples of all those mentioned ideas across social media. And we just encourage clubs to think about what you're doing to stay engaged with your members, particularly at a time when they're going to be thinking about cricket, the sun's shining, and they'd normally be down at your club. Some ideas there for you to just engage with them on a simple level.
Thanks, Dave. Over to me again. I'm going to sort of summarise. Essentially, conscious that we've talked through quite a lot there. That there is an awful lot of support out there. It's really worth really having a look at what you're doing as clubs to make sure that you're doing everything possible to continue to operate at whatever extent, but continue to, using the phrase that Andy used earlier, keep the lights on for the game of cricket. Essentially, there's lots of support out there, and it might look like it's a real minefield, and it looks like there's these funding opportunities, but we don't want you to apply for them. They're there as sort of funding pots of last resort, and it's really look at the government guidance and the government support that's available to you first, and then make sure that you've exhausted all those opportunities possible before pursuing those further avenues. as Annette pointed out as well, that will be one of the things that both Sport England and ECB and also LRS will be looking at, making sure that you have exhausted all those opportunities before applying to those other avenues. A few questions have come through in the chat, which we will pick up. Essentially, we just want to make sure that we revisit that message. Do all that you can as a club to keep yourselves operational, and make sure that you're ready for cricket to resume again at some point. We can't say when that's going to be. Just really want to reiterate the message that you as clubs have an opportunity to do all that you can, particularly while there isn't any physical cricket happening. It's an opportunity to get all of your documentation sorted, all of your engagement with your members in a different way, get all of that as efficient as it can be. Stay in touch with us. Continue to have a look at the advice and the guidance that's coming out and that we're sort of uploading to our website and on our social media channels. We'll do all that we can to make sure that information is as up to date as possible, and our contact details are on there. Want to pick up on one question that has been asked by a couple of people. Is there still funding available for projects, or has all of the funding been diverted to the COVID-19 support? There is still the interest-free loan scheme, which is available. That is still available for clubs to apply for. All of the sort of what was going to be the county grant scheme and those opportunities to apply for grants has been diverted to make sure that we're putting all the resource that's possible back into the game and keeping the game alive. So yeah, there is still funding available outside of this pot of money. There is a bit of money available for those interest-free grants, interest-free loans. Sorry, not grants. So please do apply for those. If you think you've got the opportunity to have a look at other projects, and it might be that there is resources and materials that you need as a club to keep operational, that these funding opportunities we've spoke about aren't going to be able to cover. Those interest-free loans are available. Just exchanged a couple of messages with our sort of regional advisor, our regional head, and he's sort of said it's not until you go through all of this documentation and these slides that you realise how much support there is out there. There's an awful lot of support for people to access. Don't think that you're on your own. Please contact us. Please speak to us and use us as a sounding board. Again, we'll share Annette's contact details so that you've got those if there is an opportunity to access that LRS fund. Is there anything else that we need to pick up on in terms of those questions? In terms of Dynamo's Space Hive accounts, they were time bound. That's all kind of, as far as I'm aware, that's all kind of on hold at the minute. And I'm sure that ECB will continue to provide updates on the Space Hive accounts for those clubs that were looking at running the Dynamo's programme. Please sit tight. Clearly, we can't look at a start date for All Stars and Dynamo's cricket at this point. We'll do all that we can to make sure that we're supporting any messages that are coming out from ECB. Any more questions?
Mark, can I just pick up on the funding one outside of sort of cricket world, so to speak?
Yes, please. Yeah.
There's the different funders are doing different things. I'm not sure if this was relevant to your question, but might help. So some, for example, are pausing. So Samworth Brothers, which is a local fund, are pausing. They're not supporting for COVID-19. They are supporting their main business at the minute, and then they will look to put funding, maybe towards helping get restarted. That's not something they've said. That's how I'm interpreting what may well happen. But at the moment, there's his pause. But you can submit an application, and they'll hold on it until the time comes that cricket's back up and playing, and then you can look to, they'll assess it at the next panel once the panel meetings start. There's a lot of funding out there that you might well have seen. There was a county council funding, there's lots of community emergency funds, and all I would say on all of them is really read the detail. A lot of it is funding for the here and now, the food banks, the elderly, the vulnerable. A lot of it at the moment that we've not mentioned isn't cricket. We do have a funding finder on our website where you can look at sources. They are changing constantly. So Tesco's has changed, Persimmon Grants has changed. It's not completely up to date at the minute by any means, but you can always click through to the link to see the update on the individual websites themselves. So that can hopefully help. But it's really sort of saying, really read your guidance and your criteria before you spend a long time submitting applications. In terms of the real question, I guess, around that, other projects, Sport England's are still open for CAF and Sport Grants. When you look at ones like what was Awards for All, they've got a 6-month hold on. So they're not assessing any for 6 months. I dare say most Sport England assessors are on the main fund, the emergency fund, so theirs will be similarly delayed. So yeah, but any grant questions, queries, if Mark and Andy can't answer them, please get in touch and we can do that. Thanks,
Annette. Yeah, exactly. Anything that comes through to us, if we can't answer them, we'll obviously make sure that we utilise the skills and the knowledge that we've got within the county and get in touch with Annette, and her support and connection to Sport England is going to prove invaluable at this stage. Andy, was there anything else that we needed to cover off? Was there any other questions that you picked up?
No, I think I've answered the questions. I think maybe one or two want to stay behind. Happy to chat to clubs individually if they want to have a quick chat. That's fine by me. Equally, if they want to give me a call tomorrow at some point, I'm available all day. Drop me an email. You know, we're here to support. If you've got any questions, get in touch. Happy to help. Just
very quickly, the three of us are working full time, so we are here to support. So please get in touch. One of the things that is really important to point out is that we are all working remotely. We're working from home. So you might have the office number as a contact way of getting in touch with us. When we share the slides and the useful links that we'll share our mobile numbers as well, so you can get hold of us directly. Clearly, we'll make sure that you're contacting the most relevant people. So for those clubs that are within the city, they will be your first point of call, and we'll make sure that that's really clear on the communication that comes out to you all. Thanks everybody for your time this evening and joining on the call. Hopefully it's been useful. Hopefully it's been really insightful. Just want to reiterate that message that if you have any questions at all, there's no such thing as a daft question. Please get in touch with us and we'll do all that we can to give you the answers. The information's out there and we're conscious that there's a lot of information to get through. So please just get in touch if you're unsure about anything and we'll do what we can to support you at this time. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks all.